Do you know how many days it's been since PSVR2 launched? Neither do I, but I do know it's been over 100 and we have a lot of games that have come out since then, and I'm on record saying that most of them are either pretty good or very, very good. So we're going to tier list the ones that I have played today, which include 28 titles. Obviously I haven't played them all. I wish I had the time or the money to play them all, as although a lot of developers kindly give me review codes, some don't. That's completely fine. Very small channel, but I have covered a lot. So we're going to go through 28 titles today and see where they stack up from S to D tier. Now there are some titles not on here, and if you think that it deserves to be on here and want to put a ranking for any title whatsoever, let me know in the comments below, and without further ado, let's get on with it. We're going to go in the order that they're laid out in, as we see, and not in tier order, because I feel like it's a lot more natural to go through and give my thoughts and see where they stack up. Maybe I'll put my mind around in certain points. So let's start with Jurassic World Aftermath. Now this one is actually one that I'm very fond of. I love Jurassic World and Jurassic Park, and this one was a very big, high for me, going through all the locations. Obviously, it's not very big scale. Its stealth elements are slightly repetitive, I'd say. There are a couple of enemy types, but they reuse the raptors in about 70% of your game time, which kind of sucks, but the overall gameplay loop is pretty fun. The art style did grow on me. I found it quite charming by the end of it, and the story, pretty alright as well. So I'd say we're going to whack that in B tier to start us off with. Very, very medium, setting the level, setting the bar, where we put in the middle. Oh, budget cuts. Budget cuts, budget cuts. I wanted to love this game. I really, really did. But it's got a few issues, and I do quite like it, don't get me wrong. But it's not up there in the top tiers for me because it just visually doesn't really look that great. The second game itself, they're bundled in. The first, budget cuts 1 and 2 were both in Ultimate for PSVR2. So you do get onto a lot of locations that look pretty artistically great later on. There's a lot of aliasing, the lines are very blurred, the audio is a little weird, especially in the menus. And the problem is, to get to the big set pieces and the nice looking locations, you've got to go through the first game, which is just a lot of corridors and halls that look the same. So I'm going to put budget cuts also in B tier. I would put it, they have kind of the same problem, is the environments look very samey. There's a lot of the same enemies that are put up against you, and the stealth combat is fun, but it can get old. Now, another Fisherman's Tale. I'm going to have to present these games as they are now, and not how they are in the future or how they are in the past. And another Fisherman's Tale right now, after the patch, I think, has received a fair bit of a visual upgrade. It had some aliasing going on, not as bad as budget cuts, but still a bit. But the actual story itself is great. I loved another Fisherman's Tale. The puzzles were fun as well. The hand puzzles, in the water especially, were kind of annoying, but the other puzzles, got you thinking. And I actually would put this game in A. Puzzles usually aren't my thing, and VR, unfortunately for me, has a lot of those, but this one was really charming, and I'm kind of putting it up there for the story. It got me thinking. It was pretty cute, pretty moving. Big fan of that. Next up, we have Saints and Sinners Chapter 1. Now, this is the game that kind of started it all in terms of Saints and Sinners and, PSVR generation of bringing in good games that were pretty long and had a lot of mechanics to them. And on PSVR2, it's pretty great, and I haven't run into too many bugs on PSVR2 with Saints and Sinners 1. So I'm going to put that in S tier. It genuinely is one of the best VR games out there. And actually, I'm not sure where I'd put it compared to the sequel, but we'll get on to that. I haven't run into many bugs in 1 though, and that's mainly the reason I'm putting it up in S, along with the fact that it is a classic VR title and one that everyone should play. Next up, we have Cactus Cowboys Plants at War. This is made by one person, one developer, and I mean, the scope of what they've tried to put together is kind of nuts. A single player World War II story with plants, and I have got to give them credit for, putting this game together on their own. It did kind of flashbang my ears, if that makes sense. When I loaded up the game, everything was so loud, especially on launch day, and I played through quite a few hours of it at launch day. I think I would put that in C tier. I've got to give them points. I'm not going to put it in D tier. It's fun. It's just very, very rough, and it's one developer. I mean, what are you going to do? It's one dude. He's done his best, or she's done his best, or they've done their best. I don't know what gender they are, but it was fun, but it's nothing, not even on the level of polish of Aftermath or Budget Cuts Ultimate, because it's not a team. But I do respect the effort. There's a lot of effort put in, and I think they're working on the next title. They're also very active on Twitter. All my praises towards Cactus Cowboys, but it's not, Okay, next we have, the quintessential Beat game for VR, Beat Saber, has got to go S as well, especially with the free upgrade. As it is now as well, it's so much better than it was at launch, and kudos to the team. It took them a week to fix it. It just had a couple of issues with hit registration, haptics, and with the angle of the sabers. But that's sorted now, that's all fixed, and Beat Saber deserves to be up there for sure now. I think one of the things that pushes it up as well is just the amount of licensed music they've managed to get their hands on. You can play a lot of big bands that are around, and even with the mixtapes, they have a lot of good songs that are really well known. Beat Saber's just, it's a no-brainer for VR, to be honest. Now, Kayak VR MIrage is one that I have a very weird relationship with. A lot of people don't like this game or don't put it as highly as maybe I would, but I'm going to put it in A tier because I think Kayak VR MIrage, for its visuals alone, is pretty great. One of the things that you've got to consider is VR as a platform to show other people, and I think this game is perfect for that. If you get someone around to your house to play VR for the first time, you put them on Kayak VR. They don't have any weird controls. You can put them on serene, flat water so they don't get motion sick, and they're sat down, which is a good starter to play VR in. And the visuals are just incredible. There's quite a few locations with a fair bit to explore in them. They're not massive open world areas, but there is a fair bit to look around. The haptics are really good as well. I mean, it's a great game, and I'm hoping they bring out more content in the future, and there is multiplayer on their Trello board for the future. Well, that would be awesome. Next up, Resi Village. I've only played around 5 hours, and I really haven't got far in this game. But it's got to be S. From what I've played and from what I hear, it's the same quality all the way through. It's a AAA VR experience. Feels like it's not even meant to be ported to VR. It feels like it's made for VR. Just all round a genuinely incredible game. Now, Synth Riders I also love as well, but I think I'm going to put that in A tier because Synth Riders a little bit below Beat Saber just for me because their lack of licensed music, and I know that's maybe unfair for a smaller team to be able to get the rights to those songs, but that really is what pushes Beat Saber up there for me. Synth Riders also I feel is less satisfying with its gameplay loop. It's fun, it feels more like dancing, but just chopping blocks in Beat Saber. It is perfection. Next up, Across the Valley. I'm sorry, but you're going in D, because Across the Valley, I wanted to love this game so much. You can go and watch my review of it. Well, I say review, it's more like a first hands-on. And I did enjoy it, but the further you get into the game with managing a farm, everything feels more like a chore. It's only teleportation movement only, which kind of sucks. The visuals do have a nice artistic style to them. They feel like they're drawn, but at the same time, like a realistic farming simulator would be pretty fun in VR. GORN. GORN was one of my favorites on PSVR 1, but I'm going to throw it in C tier, unfortunately, on PSVR 2, just because it's got a host of issues. Now, I don't think these have been fixed to my knowledge. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But GORN had a lot of issues with sound, especially the hits were really quiet while a lot of other sounds were really loud when I played. That pull to move feels really dated now when you can turn that off. But then you lose out on features like the flight ability and a few other abilities as well. It is nice they added stick movement, but also they added smooth turning, but it has the worst vignette I've ever seen in VR. It's genuinely awful. But the actual gameplay loop is pretty fun. It doesn't offer that much replayability because it's the same enemies over and over again with only different types of armor aside from the bosses. But overall, it still is fun. Garden of the Sea gets a solid A from me. That rhymed. It's a great game. Honestly, didn't expect much from it. Didn't have that much hype for it when it came out. Played it at launch, and it's just really solid. You take care of your animals, you build your farm, you explore around islands, you have a little boat you can go around in. Garden of the Sea is genuinely just pretty perfect in what it does. Visually as well, everything's crisp. It's got a cool art style, kind of similar to another Fisherman's Tale and Across the Valley, but it has its own art style that feels really unique to it. And I'd recommend playing it if it goes on sale, if it doesn't look like your type of thing, but you want to give it a shot. And if it looks like your type of thing, just go play it. It's a great game, honestly. Song in the Smoke, I'm going to put an A as well. It's got some really great mechanics. The survival elements are amazing. It's so much fun to play, but there is a bit of repetition in the environments that got me lost a couple times, and I don't really like the art style that much. That's probably a hot take. I prefer more realistic survival games, but its loop is great. Honestly, the crafting, amazing. The being hunted by animals and hunting animals is really satisfying. It's got a really trippy art style sometimes, and while I wasn't a massive fan of the art style that much overall in some areas, when it really leans into the, foreboding atmosphere, it really can pull off some amazing visuals. So, Song in the Smoke, I'd recommend it. Any survival fan, go play it on PSVR 2. It's great. Now, Swordsman VR, it's had a whole host of issues. Don't get me wrong, I do love this game from PSVR 1 as well, but put up to the rest of the others, visually it doesn't really stand to a lot of them. It's not as bad at aliasing as Budget Cuts Ultimate, but it's got its own fun little gameplay loop. I just find it a little stale, and it seems with every update they do kind of break it, but it doesn't take them too long to fix it. But I put Swordsman at a B. Right, Horizon Call of the Mountain. This one, a lot of people aren't as big of a fan of as Resi Village, or as Beat Saber, or Saints and Sinners 1. I'm going to put it up there with them, purely because it really just blew me away with the headset. My only issue with Horizon is maybe its level length when you're doing repeat playthroughs, but to be honest, I got my money's worth out of it on that first playthrough. It was incredible. There is an excessive amount of climbing, but I really didn't mind that. I found that really fun, taking in the sights and finding routes around the cliffs. But reprojection is the only thing that kills it a little bit for me. But to be honest, if you want to put on snap turning, it kind of gets rid of most of that. The haptics are pretty nuts with the bigger machines. The bow and arrow gameplay loop was a load of fun. And for any Horizon fan like myself, I played through the first game, meaning to play through the second. Nuts. It's so good. It captures that world perfectly. You meet a lot of the characters. The dialogue's fine. It's not great. It's not bad. The facial animations, just like Alex as well, are nuts. Recommend it to any Horizon fan or anybody that really just wants to take in amazing sights on PSVR2, and it comes bundled with the headset for a lot of people as well. So, good game. This one is going to annoy some people, but Walking Dead Saints and Sinners Chapter 2 Retribution, longest name in the world, goes in A for me. Don't get me wrong, it expands on most of the things that Saints and Sinners does really, really well. It's got some bigger locations, some better looking locations, some awesome new weapons, a cool new villain, but it is kind of broken still. I've encountered bugs where my hands are jittering all over the place, where objects get stuck in place, when enemies don't spawn in so I can't complete a mission properly, where enemies pathfinding breaks completely, where enemies shoot me through walls. It needed some more time in the oven, and I think if I hop into it in a couple months' time, it's going to be completely cleaned up and fixed. But Retribution just seemed like a port that needed some more time in the oven. Don't get me wrong though, the game is really good. You just occasionally encounter that stuff that kind of kills it for you and takes you out of the game experience. And that's only the reason that I'm not putting it on the same level as Saints and Sinners. If those all get sorted, it's on the same level for sure. For now, not quite. Now, Job Simulator is a game that is kind of perfect for getting people into VR as well, but it can seem like a bit of a gimmick for them because there isn't that much to do in terms of complexity. But it is one of the classics, but I'm going to put it in B as well. Puzzling Places is VR relaxation perfection, and that goes in S for me. Don't come at me, that is just, it's just a perfect game. It really is. And just a VR puzzle making game is a perfect idea. It really is, and they pulled it off completely flawlessly. And with that multiplayer update, it's going to be perfect to make puzzles, and kind of hectic to make puzzles with friends. If you haven't picked up Puzzling Places, and it looks like a fun relaxation game to you, pick it up. Demeo is a very similar story, but it's going to go in A, one tier below S, because of a couple of things. Firstly, Demeo, its gameplay loop is great, its Dungeons and Dragons feel is pretty awesome, its sound design and voices pretty solid as well, and it's just a great idea to have a tabletop game transferred into VR, especially playing with friends or playing with randoms with their mics on. You can have a lot of fun with this game. But they've also said they're not bringing some features over that I thought they would, and that kind of brings it down a bit for me. There's a feature on Quest and on PC where you can paint miniatures in a social environment. You have a social hub. That's just not coming to PSVR 2. At least they've stated it isn't for now and isn't for the foreseeable future. And I kind of really wish it was, because it's such a cool feature to have. And it's missing that extra social aspect to it that will bring it up to S tier for me. Not gonna lie, the Light Brigade as well is just so good and executed well. Some really impressive audio design. Its gunplay is really solid and has weight to it. Its procedurally generated levels, also really cool. Its bosses are hard but fun, and it nails that Dark Souls VR feeling but with guns. And this is one I slept on at launch, and if you're sleeping on it, give a look at this gameplay and the trailers and let me know what you think, because the Light Brigade is really so good. Now I know this one is going to piss people off as well. No Man's Sky is going to go in B, and I'll put it there and then I'll explain myself, because it's almost there. It's almost A or S. It really is, but those visuals, they just kill it for me. They really do, and I wish they didn't. But there's just so much to do, and a space sim like that is needed, and it's pretty great. On to the easiest one on this list, almost by far, is Pavlov. Easy S. So many hours of game time, loads of different modes. There's different eras such as World War II. There's zombies. There's modern. Look at my video from yesterday. Pavlov TTT. That's the best mode in the game by far. And with friends or even with randoms, the voice and proximity chat, so damn good. And the gunplay is really solid. Red Matter 2 is also another S for me. It's visually stunning, the puzzles are pretty fun, even for a non-puzzle fan like myself, and just the scale of things being shown to you, especially in the first half of the game, are worth the price of admission alone. And it's running at 120 Hz, not reprojected. That's ridiculous. It really is, but it's such a good game. If you haven't given this one a chance, please do, you will not regret it. Travel the words, I'm also going to put in D tier. This is another solo dev, and you know, they've kind of executed the idea that they have pretty damn well. It's just a word search game where when you find the words, it appears on your screen or get highlighted to you and it tells you facts about them. Good little educational game and a lot of fun and relaxing. I would put it for sale before picking this one up, to be honest. It's about $10, I think, in the US store and £10 in the UK store. And that's a little steep for me. I think it's about $5 in the Steam store, and I think that's about the right price for it. But, you know, it does what it sets out to do, but it just isn't really up there for me, that's all. Another easy S, Walkabout Mini Golf. If you've played this game, you understand. They've got more DLC in the works all the time, and honestly, the game is just visually stunning. Runs with no reprojection, I think, or at least a little bit. I think it runs at 90. That is super smooth, really nice. It's a really great social experience. Up to 8 players can play together, can go through courses together. The courses themselves are really diverse. You've got grassy courses, you've got courses in space, you've got under the sea. Amazing game. After the Fall is also going to go in A tier. This is a fun co-op game. I said it was akin to Left 4 Dead, and that's pretty much the closest thing you can bring it to in non-VR. It's a lot of fun with mates. The animations are a little wonky for players, but that's just part of the charm with Vertigo games, to be honest. After the Fall is a lot of fun. Gran Turismo 7 is another easy S as well. A realistic driving sim, but in VR. It's just genius and executes it so damn well. I played about 40 hours playing through the campaign and completing it in flat screen before I bought it, because I was addicted to the gameplay loop even before they brought VR into it. And then when they did bring VR into it, even with reprojection, it looks incredible with foveated rendering. The sense of speed is really real there. The haptics when you hit walls are also just kind of nuts. And with a steering wheel, it's just ridiculously good. But ultimately, Zenith, The Last City. This is one I'm also going to put in B tier because I really wanted to love it. I really did. It had that Sword Art Online visual style that I was looking for. Seems to have some pretty cool melee combat and a lot of quests to do, and sure it does, but sometimes it feels a little bit too overwhelming with what it wants you to do. Its combat is slightly weird, like the netcode is lagging behind at times. Management of items and picking up items feels a little wonky as well. Your character's hands don't quite interact properly with things. And overall it didn't engage me as much as I wanted it to, but there is a lot of content to do in here. It swings for that open world MMO RPG feel. It pretty much gets there, but it falls flat a little bit and feels too wonky to be enjoyed, and especially in long sessions. Finally, we have one of the most controversial on this list, and that's Switchback. I'm going to stand by my review by saying Switchback is an A for me, but that's from the perspective of a fan of the Dark Pictures. I was going through all these levels, recognizing locations, characters, and enemies, and being really impressed by the amount of stuff they managed to get into this game within its own narrative. However, it wasn't as fast-paced as Rush of Blood, which I'd put at an S if it was on PSVR2, and its visuals were slightly lacking. The only thing that brings it up is that a lot of it's dark, and for me at least, the aliasing wasn't as bad as, say, Budget Cuts, and it had enough visual variety over games like Jurassic World that it kept me engaged with all of its locations. It is getting a patch at the end of this month, or at some point in this month I think, so look out for that. It's essentially going to upgrade all the assets to better looking assets, introducing foveated rendering and FSR, so everything's going to look really smooth and nice. I already really enjoy Switchback VR, but I am a fan of the Dark Pictures after all, and I'm scared very easily. So if you weren't a fan of that one, I understand, but for me it's an A because I really liked this game, but I understand if you didn't. And there we have it, all of the games that I played on PSVR2 ranked from the worst to the best. There you go. 28 to be in fact, or 29 I think. You'll notice if you're astute that Switchback was added in there halfway through because I forgot it. I don't know how I forgot it. I downloaded the JPEG for it and everything, just didn't load it in. But I think that's 29 titles maybe then. And I'm pretty happy with that ranking. We've got a decent spread, and most games are in A or above, and only a couple are in B and C and D. For any games you have played, like for example, Tales from the Galaxy's Edge, I haven't played even though I'm a massive Star Wars fan. That might have been an S or A for me, but I haven't played that one just yet. Let me know what you think of games like that, which are missing from this list. I'll be sure to read your comments, and I'd love to hear what you think. Anyway, that's my list done, over. If you did enjoy, feel free to like and subscribe. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.